Hello, I'm the Power Novelist, your captain through the rough seas of media, and it's time for yet another contest entry. Well, I hope you like the new intro and new music to go along with that. For the longest time, I was using music from a band called Aim Your Arrows, and was recently talking to a friend named Kelsey and her awesome band called Kevlar, and basically through our conversations, they agreed to basically be the background music for my new intro. So if you'd like to check them out, I will leave a link to all of their pertinent information in the description below. Please check out Kevlar. They are an awesome band. I definitely think you're going to like it if you watch much. So this is a contest entry for Backwoods Metal's Sloppy Seconds contest. Basically what we have to do to enter is show 5 albums where basically it was a sophomore album that was just a little bit weaker than the debut album. So I have a collection of 5 here. 2 are CDs and 3 are actually vinyl. As much as I tout how much vinyl I have, I don't have absolutely everything, so kind of just pulled from my collection. I'm going to save my most controversial pick for last, but for now, let's go ahead and get started. The first pick I'm going to show you is on CD, and I'm not going to show you the cover because it's actually signed by the band, so I'm going to just show a picture somewhere on screen when I actually, talk about the album, so then that way you can get an idea of what it looks like. My first pick is Alibis Way, Homeschool Valedictorian, and again, this is just the CD version. I'll show you the CD here real quick. And somewhere on screen, I'll be showing a copy of the cover. Now, for me, I got into Alibis Way through Homeschool Valedictorian. Even though this is a strong sophomore album, it's just a little bit weaker than their debut. And that doesn't knock it down completely. All these albums that I'm going to be showing are wonderful, wonderful albums, but again, they're just a little bit weaker than the debut album. So again, the first pick that I have is Alibis Way, Homeschool Valedictorian. When I heard this contest premise, there were a couple of albums that kind of just popped into my head immediately when I was thinking of what I wanted to choose. And this particular one that I'm going to show is exactly, my first thought as to, really a sophomore slump. And that for me is Chicago 2. Not too much to show here. I'll show Gatefold. It's been very loved upon, and it's a little bit worse for wear, but it still plays just fine. It has the original poster too. Why not just show that? For me, it's as much as I love 25 or 624. Just listening to this album beginning to end was really, I felt it was a bit weaker than the Chicago Transit Authority album before it. And when I think of Terry Kath and I think of, what Chicago did and what, kind of blend of music that they offered, it's just Chicago 2 was weaker than the first album, which was Chicago Transit Authority. And this one was not by much. This was one that I initially thought of to kind of start building my list. So if I had to pick a quintessential, a little bit weaker of a sophomore album, it would be that one. This next one I already talked a little bit about in my top 50, which is 21 Pilots' Blurry Face. I already talked about this in my top 50 countdown, but for me, it really is just a little bit of a weaker album in the scheme of things, and as much as this album means to me, just thinking about it as a cohesive whole, it's just a little bit weaker than Vessel in my eyes. It's still a wonderful album, it's just a little bit weaker. I think I may get a little bit of flack in the comments for these final 2, But again, this is just my opinion. I really like this contest idea, so I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring here. But this one I chose is Nirvana's Nevermind. Now, I talked earlier in my previous video that in the scheme of Seattle grunge, Nirvana is just one of those bands that is on the lower end of the favorite spectrum for me. As much as I feel this album is 100% classic, I felt that Bleach was just better than Nevermind, and it's what I get out of each album, and I just get a little bit more out of Bleach, and I feel that it's a little bit stronger. That one, Nirvana's Nevermind, I felt was the commercial success album, and it feels like the first album was just a little bit better and, you know, just pushed a little bit more with what Kurt wanted to do with it, and that's why it made the list. Before I get to my final pick, I wanted to have one honorable mention, and that is Paramore's Riot. And again, another one that I talked a little bit to death about before, but I feel that Riot is just one of those weaker albums, and I didn't bring it out to show with me because I just put it away. This is actually my second video that I'm filming right now, so I didn't feel like bringing it out, but I already talked about, you know, why it was lower, it was weaker in my previous video, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail with that. But I just thought I'd give that an honorable mention. My last pick is actually going to be a CD because I do not have it on vinyl. I wish I did. However, none of these albums that, you know, I picked are not hate albums. I own them for a reason, but they, again, this contest is asking for weaker sophomore albums, and these are the ones that I thought fit. This last one is probably my most controversial pick, and just thinking back to when I was listening to it and revisiting it again, it just felt a little bit weaker, and this is not a knock against the album, but Pearl Jam's Versus. I love this album, but I feel that growing connection to 10 more, because that's how I got into Pearl Jam, and that's why it made it on the list. Is for me, it's just a tad bit weaker than Pearl Jam's 10, and thinking back to when I got to see them, there were a lot of songs off this album that were played, but thinking back to studio and thinking back to, you know, what they were trying to do, it's just Pearl Jam captured something with 10 that this one feels just a little bit weaker in my opinion. Just to recap, that was Adelita's Way, Homeschool Valedictorian, Chicago 2, 21 Pilots, Blurry Face, Nirvana's Nevermind, and Pearl Jam Versus. So thank you so very much for watching. I know this was a shorter video. I was actually planning on having this be a shorter video. I do want to have shorter videos. I know my last two videos were an hour close to it and another hour close to it, but I really wanted to make that special. So I'm hoping to have a little bit shorter videos to kind of supplement on my channel here. So that about wraps it up for this contest entry. I know I had a couple of controversial picks there, but again, this is all just my opinion. What might be my choice on this video might actually be your favorite and might not make it into what you might consider to be, you know, a sophomore slump. I'd definitely like to know. Please let me, you know, talk to me in the comments and let me know what your thoughts are. If you haven't checked out Backwoods Metal's channel, I'm going to leave a link in the description. It's a wonderful channel. Go ahead and check it out if you haven't already. But until the next video, as I always say, when the waters get rough, keep on sailing.